The year was 1939, a year that would be etched into the annals of history as the beginning of one of the most devastating conflicts the world has ever seen. The world watched, holding its breath, as news of escalating tensions spread like wildfire. People gathered around radios, their faces etched with worry as they listened to the latest updates. Europe teetered on the precipice of disaster. Political leaders engaged in tense discussions, trying to navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy. The fate of nations hung in the balance. Within a year, the flames of war would engulf the globe, spreading from Europe to Asia, Africa, and beyond. The world was plunged into a conflict of unprecedented scale. The devastation was immense. Cities were reduced to rubble, and millions of people were displaced, fleeing the horrors of war. The human cost was staggering, with countless lives lost and families torn apart. But how did this happen? How did the world find itself in such a catastrophic conflict? The seeds of war were sown long before the first shots were fired. Key events and decisions, such as the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and the Munich Agreement, played crucial roles in the lead-up to war. These agreements, meant to secure peace, ultimately paved the way for conflict. World War II, a global conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality, remains a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. The war reshaped the world in ways that are still felt today. The battles raged on multiple fronts, with soldiers fighting in harsh conditions, facing unimaginable challenges. The bravery and sacrifice of these individuals are remembered and honored to this day. Millions perished, entire cities were reduced to rubble, and the world grappled with the horrors of genocide and atomic warfare. The Holocaust and the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are stark reminders of the darkest aspects of human nature. The world was forever changed by these events. The echoes of this devastating conflict continue to resonate today, shaping our world in profound ways. In the aftermath of the war, nations came together to rebuild and to ensure that such a conflict would never happen again. Memorials and cemeteries stand as solemn reminders of the lives lost and the lessons learned. Institutions like the United Nations and the European Union were established to promote peace and cooperation among nations. These efforts have helped to maintain stability and prevent further global conflicts. While the major players and events of World War II are widely known, many mysteries and unanswered questions remain. Historians continue to uncover new information and perspectives on this pivotal moment in history. The motivations and decisions of key figures, such as generals and political leaders, are still being analyzed and debated. Newspaper clippings and archival documents provide valuable insights into the mindset of the time. What were the hidden motivations and secret agreements that shaped the course of the war? Were there opportunities to prevent the conflict that were missed or ignored? The policy of appeasement, for example, is often cited as a critical factor in the lead-up to war. Could different decisions have altered the course of history? This essay delves into the complex web of causes and consequences, exploring the lesser-known aspects of this pivotal moment in history. By examining the past, we can gain a deeper understanding of the present and work towards a more peaceful future. Join us as we uncover the hidden stories and untangle the intricate threads of World War II. Through this exploration, we hope to honor the memory of those who lived through these tumultuous times and to learn from their experiences. To truly understand the outbreak of World War II, we must first journey back to the aftermath of World War I. The world was left in ruins, and the leaders of the victorious nations sought to create a peace treaty that would prevent such a catastrophe from ever happening again. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was the result of these efforts. It was intended to ensure lasting peace, but instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. The treaty imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including significant territorial losses, military restrictions, and crippling reparations. The leaders who signed the treaty believed that these measures would prevent Germany from becoming a threat again. However, the reality was far different. The treaty's punitive measures created a deep sense of humiliation and resentment among the German people. Germany, burdened by crippling reparations and blamed for the war, felt deeply humiliated and resentful. The economic strain caused by the reparations led to hyperinflation and widespread poverty, further exacerbating the sense of injustice felt by the German populace. The treaty's harsh terms created a fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. Political instability and economic hardship made the German people desperate for change, and they became increasingly receptive to radical ideas. Economic instability, political turmoil, and a deep sense of national humiliation fueled the rise of nationalism and militarism in Germany. Extremist groups, such as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, began to gain traction by promising to restore Germany's former glory and reverse the humiliations imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. The stage was set for a charismatic leader to exploit these grievances and lead the nation down a dangerous path. Adolf Hitler, with his powerful oratory skills and promises of a renewed and powerful Germany, quickly rose to prominence. Hitler's rise to power was facilitated by the widespread discontent and the desire for a strong leader who could restore national pride. He capitalized on the economic instability, political turmoil, and the deep-seated resentment towards the Treaty of Versailles to rally support for his cause. The seeds of resentment and instability, sown in the aftermath of the First World War, would eventually blossom into the global conflict of World War II. The Treaty of Versailles, rather than securing lasting peace, had created a volatile situation that would lead to even greater devastation. The failure to address the underlying causes of World War I, combined with the punitive measures against Germany, set the stage for the rise of a totalitarian regime. Hitler's promises of economic recovery, national rejuvenation, and the reversal of the Treaty of Versailles' humiliations resonated deeply with the German people. As Hitler consolidated power, he began to implement his vision of a new Germany. The militarization of the nation, the suppression of political opposition, and the propagation of extremist ideologies became the hallmarks of his regime. The world watched as Germany, under Hitler's leadership, embarked on a path that would lead to the outbreak of World War II. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to prevent another global conflict, had instead laid the groundwork for one. The harsh terms and the failure to address the root causes of World War I created a situation ripe for exploitation by extremist leaders. The lessons of the Treaty of Versailles remind us of the importance of addressing the underlying causes of conflict and the dangers of imposing punitive measures that can lead to further resentment and instability. The seeds of resentment and instability, sown in the aftermath of the First World War, would eventually blossom into the global conflict of World War II. The Treaty of Versailles, rather than securing lasting peace, had created a volatile situation that would lead to even greater devastation. The world would once again be plunged into war, and the lessons of the past would serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of failing to build a just and lasting peace. Amidst the turmoil of the interwar period, a new breed of leader emerged, the dictator. Fueled by nationalist fervor and exploiting economic hardship, these authoritarian figures rose to power in Germany, Italy, and Japan, promising their people strength and prosperity. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party capitalized on widespread discontent, skillfully channeling resentment towards the Treaty of Versailles and promoting a dangerous ideology of racial purity and German supremacy. Hitler's charisma and promises of national rejuvenation resonated with a population desperate for hope and stability. Meanwhile, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime took hold in Italy, glorifying war and national expansion. In Japan, militarists gained control, driven by imperial ambitions and seeking to establish dominance in Asia. A toxic brew of nationalism, militarism, and economic crisis had created a dangerous international climate. Section 4. Appeasement. A fatal miscalculation. As the dictators consolidated their power and pursued aggressive foreign policies, the democratic nations of Europe, still reeling from the horrors of World War I, were hesitant to confront them. A policy of appeasement, championed by British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, emerged as a desperate attempt to avoid another devastating war. Believing that Hitler's demands were limited and that he could be reasoned with, Chamberlain and other Western leaders made concessions, hoping to satisfy his territorial ambitions and maintain peace. However, Hitler's appetite for conquest proved insatiable, and each act of appeasement only emboldened him further. The Munich Agreement of 1938, in which Britain and France agreed to cede the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia to Germany, is a prime example of the dangers of appeasement. Instead of satiating Hitler's hunger for expansion, it only strengthened his resolve and convinced him of the weakness of the Western powers. Section 5. The Spark Ignites: Invasion of Poland. On September 1, 1939, the world watched in horror as German forces stormed across the Polish border, initiating a conflict that would engulf the globe. The invasion was swift and brutal, with German tanks and troops overwhelming Polish defenses in a matter of days. The skies were filled with the ominous roar of Luftwaffe bombers, raining destruction on towns and cities. The invasion shattered the fragile peace that had held for a mere 20 years since the end of World War I. The world was plunged into chaos as the German Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, demonstrated a new and terrifying form of warfare. The Polish people, caught in the crossfire, faced unimaginable suffering. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and the very fabric of society was ripped to shreds. World War II had begun, and the invasion of Poland was the spark that ignited the global conflagration. This blatant act of aggression finally shattered the illusion that Hitler could be appeased or contained. For years, the world had watched as the Nazi regime grew bolder, annexing Austria and Czechoslovakia with little resistance. But the invasion of Poland was a step too far. Britain and France, bound by their treaty obligations to Poland, could no longer stand idly by. They issued ultimatums to Germany, demanding an immediate withdrawal of troops. When these demands were ignored, Britain and France declared war on Germany 2 days later, on September 3, 1939. The die was cast, and Europe was once again plunged into the abyss of war. The declarations of war were met with a mix of resolve and dread. Soldiers were mobilized, cities prepared for air raids, and the world braced itself for the horrors to come. What began as a regional conflict quickly escalated into a global conflagration, drawing in nations from every corner of the world. The Axis powers, led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, sought to reshape the world order through conquest and domination. In response, the Allies, including Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and eventually the United States, formed a coalition to resist this aggression. The war would be fought on multiple fronts, from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Southeast Asia, and the icy waters of the Atlantic to the vast expanse of the Pacific. The invasion of Poland marked a turning point in history. The era of appeasement was over, and the world was now fully aware of the threat posed by the Axis powers. The Munich Agreement, which had been hailed as a triumph of diplomacy just a year earlier, was now seen as a tragic mistake. The policy of appeasement had failed, and the consequences were devastating. As nations around the world prepared for a long and bloody conflict, the question remained, what were the calculations and miscalculations that led to this fateful moment? The answer, like the war itself, is complex and multifaceted. It involves a web of political, economic, and social factors, as well as the ambitions and fears of the leaders involved. The invasion of Poland was not an isolated event, but the culmination of a series of actions and reactions that had been building for years. The world would never be the same again. The invasion of Poland set in motion a chain of events that would lead to unprecedented destruction and loss of life. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked aggression and the importance of standing up to tyranny. As we look back on this dark chapter in history, we must remember the lessons learned and strive to build a more just and peaceful world.